So I'll make a very quick introduction. William Hirsch was my father's oldest friend, maybe, maybe not. Nancy Rosen was if I speak English, my mom's sister-in-law. Miranda is my niece. Beth Cohen is my brother-in-law's, how do we connect that? Regular
Wife.
wife, that would be the word.
Wife,
Is a good friend of my sister's. Michael Colby is a good friend of mine, brilliant writer. Deborah Fain is a good friend of Cathy and myself, who came to see many of my shows. Rolly Cooper is Cathy's brother, I think, right? Gwen is daughter of Anne, who used to take care of us when we were like, what, how old? Like 2 years
Up
old?
till age 12, easily.
Yeah. Rabbi Burt, Rich Mancini is an old college friend of mine. Tim is a friend of ours. Laura is our niece, Nancy's daughter, and Diane as well. And Greg is a good friend of mine. Dr. Tully. I should change it to Dr. Tully. Sandy Heath is a good friend of ours. And Cheryl Romanoff is another good friend of ours from Riverdale. Right? Cheryl knew my mom and in their first apartment in Riverdale, I think, right? Am I totally wrong on that one? I could be, or close to it. And then Rosemary Hopkins, who unfortunately can't get in, but she is here in spirit and voice.
I'm here under the R.
She's a
You
neighbor.
just can't see my face.
And then the good thing, yeah, it's okay. We see your R. Jay, Mickey, and Irene are good friends of mine and of Cathy's, and we've done lots of shows together. Tammy and Carly are good friends of Miranda's and daughter of Sue Ray up there. And Christian Perry is a friend of mine from college, and we've done my podcast. He's been my co-host. I think I've covered mostly everybody.
Hey, you forgot to mention I'm a friend of Cathy's and Raleigh's too.
I totally forgot that, because everybody's a friend of Cathy and Raleigh.
So first I want to introduce myself. I'm Rabbi Bert Siegel, and I've known the family, believe it or not, for over 50 years. And I was the family's rabbi in Riverdale, and I officiated at many, many very important life events in the family. And I appreciate very much being asked to be here for this important time of transition for the family as well. Thank you very much for thinking of me. So we've come together in a way that unfortunately we've become used to over the last year and a half or so, electronically, but there is of course a wonderful aspect to it. We're all able to be together. So we've come together united by a great love for Paul and for Lucy, a great love for Cathy and for Stephen, for Paul's son-in-law Raleigh and Paul's wonderful granddaughter Miranda. So today we grieve and we mourn, we cry, but we're also here to honor and to celebrate a life that was lived with a great sense of integrity, a life that was always filled with kindness and with love, and a life of goodness, the life of a mensch. It's better to say, I love Paul, instead of saying, I loved Paul, because love never dies. We're here also to express our admiration and our love for Paul. We're here to, by our love and our compassion and our caring, create a healing space for those who are in such mourning during these days of darkness. Paul, of course, will always be in the hearts of those who loved him, who walked with him on the journey of his life. And I know his presence will always be with those who loved him and walked with him on that journey to inspire and to guide and to give strength. As I said, I've known the family for a very long time, and I have very personal memories of Paul that I want to share with you. So I get the first chance to share a memory, and I hope that many of you will also share many of your memories later. Cathy used to sing in the junior congregation choir at Riverdale Temple. And Paul would very often come on Shabbat afternoon to Kvel and to Shep Nachis from hearing her very, very beautiful voice. And he was always very supportive of me. I was a young rabbi with black hair who was still wet behind the ears, but he encouraged me and he supported me, and I'm very thankful for that. So I have some few prayers and readings that I want to share with you as part of the service. There is a book in the Bible called the Book of Ecclesiastes, and these are very familiar words to all of us. There's the song, of course, that's based on these words. Very important to keep these words in mind at a time like this. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. There's a very familiar psalm, the 23rd Psalm, which is very often recited at funeral services. I think mostly because of the verse that says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. That understanding that there's some divine source of life that gives life to every moment of life. We call that fourth God, or other people may choose to use other words. But that brings us strength, even when we're walking at the most difficult time possible for any human being, walking in the valley of the shadow of death. I'll say a few verses in Hebrew. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binotesh she'arbitzeni, al memenachot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshoveh. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'beit Adonai le'orech yamim. And there's a poem that has become traditional also at funerals, Jewish funerals. Words are very deep. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing. We see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. So I'd like either Cathy or Stephen to share their words with us now.
So, what was most meaningful to me about my dad were the lessons that he taught me. So I want to share some of them with you. My dad always taught me that his father's favorite saying was, "You only have eyes in the front of your head. So do not dwell on the past or looking back, but look forward to new opportunities and new vistas." I thought I had learned all I needed to know from Dad well before the past few weeks, but he showed me again what made him so special. When I was visiting, I was trying to work their incredibly complex TV remote. Miranda and Raleigh know that I am remote challenged, and anything having to do with TV's video, computer hardware, not my thing. I was failing completely at just turning the darn thing on. And I told Dad that I was going to give up and hand it back to him, and it was up to him to use it. And he said to me, "Cathy, you have to keep a positive attitude." My dad, missing his right ear to cancer, with his hands swollen into balloons by arthritis and even more ailments. And he was reminding me to have a positive attitude. Well, hell yes. You know what? I have mastered the damn remote in honor of Dad. About 5 years ago, I asked Dad what his favorite memory was. Without pausing, he said, going to Brooklyn Dodgers games at Ebbets Field with his dad. And I remembered one more story that taught me a lot about setting priorities and that people will surprise you. In perhaps the 3rd or 4th grade, he and a buddy, maybe that was you, Billy Hirsch, skipped school to sneak in to watch the Dodgers game. On the way home, their teacher caught them. And what did she say? Well, did they win? That was my dad. Those lessons will always be with me. Thank you, Dad.
Can you all hear me? I don't know. Yeah? Cool. All right. Well, I'm used to collaborating, and I love to collaborate, but I had to collaborate with myself and figure out how to put my words to paper. So here goes. My dad, Paul Silverstein. He was the most devoted husband on this planet. He was an avid golfer. He was captain of his tennis team at Northwestern, something I never was, and the most brilliant stockbroker I know. My dad, who would take me to the Mets World Series game. I wasn't so interested in the game as he was. My strongest memory associated with that World Series was listening to the Mets sing on the album associated with the World Series. Oh, well. My dad, when he had something to say, he said it. The stockbroker that he was, my dad would always encourage me to invest in Roth IRAs every year, even though I wasn't making enough money. As my sister said, his optimism about investing was contagious, and I would do it. And you know what? He was never wrong. My dad, who would once a month on Saturday take me to get my hair cut when I was 10, he loved this particular barber in New Rochelle and told the barber to take good care of my son. Every time we went, I hated getting my hair cut because I liked the barber. He wasn't a bad barber, but the haircut was usually 30 to 40 minutes. And me in a chair, can you imagine me at age 10 in that chair for that length of time? I, of course, was not a happy camper after 40 minutes, but I did it. I loved my dad, and he loved this barber. So I grinned and bared it once a month. My dad, who had strong opinions and loved to talk about things like that, he didn't always agree with me. So I remember also of a time that my sister told me when my dad said not to take my watch to camp, leave it at home. You can leave it at home. You don't have to bring it with you. So as the bus was pulling out, On the way to camp, I waved my arm and there was the watch. And my dad smiled. My dad was a strong-willed individual, and so am I. I called my dad every day for every day for the last years of his life. I didn't always feel it was necessary, but he loved it. Even though he hated talking on the phone, his voice was cheery when he talked to me, no matter what he really was thinking or feeling. When I quizzed him on daily events, he would answer without a blink. He would never mince words. He said it like it was. One of the last words my dad said to me as we were walking into the elevator after the concert where I played for my sister at his assisted living was, "You're a real musician." No, you're a professional musician. When my dad told me this, I knew it was so. Thank you, Dad. I love you so much to the sky forever and ever. And I will miss our morning chats. Thank you.
Let's start this way. The name is Paul Lester Silverstein. Paul Lester Silverstein. And Paul was a wonderful friend and an athlete beyond tennis and beyond golf. He was a good punch ball player in the streets of Brooklyn. Everybody respected him and had their own name for him. He was, to most of the people in love, Pablo. And to me, he was always by his middle name, not his first name, just Pablo. And he called me James, and I knew him as a very dear friend. Not known by most people. Many years after World War II, he and I and several others climbed Mount Katahdin in Maine. And he was the first one to reach the pinnacle of the mountain. He was a person who tried hard and was totally honest in every respect. And the reason he was honest is that that was his nature, and that was also his inheritance. His father, Nat, his mother, Ada, his sister, Phyllis, were all of that same quality that's very rare today of being honest in every respect, clear in every respect. A very, very fine person whom I can say, as the rabbi said, he is not loved in the past tense. His love goes on in the present tense. Pablo Lester, we loved you and we love you and we miss you. And I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to see your family. Dear Steve, dear Cathy, dear Rolly, everybody, and of course, dear Lucy. We all send our regards to you, Pablo, wherever you are. I know you're smiling and doing a damn good job, whatever you're doing. So long, pal.
My husband Jay and I are tuning in from Connecticut. And I guess the most recent time we saw Paul and Lucille was was it down at Lincoln Center, Stephen, when
Yeah, I think it was
we-
Lincoln Center. That
yes.
was, yeah. When was the church thing? That might have been after that.
Oh, well, anyway, my point is, no matter when I saw your dad, whether it was 35 years ago or now, he always had a big, warm, wonderful smile. So does Lucille, your mom. And I want to share a memory from your parents that I will never forget and what kind of people they were. First of all, we know how proud Paul and Lucille are, not only of Stephen, but of Cathy, of Miranda, of their family, of the friends of their family. They would come to every show and always have the most beatific grin and so proud and so friendly. And they were just wonderful, wonderful people. But what I wanted to share was that I was down in Disney World with my then husband, Peter, with the two little kids. My children were young, and Stephen and his family were staying at one of the Disney hotels. And Stephen said, "Why don't you stop by and see us?" Because we were also in Orlando. So we stopped by at the hotel to see them. And of course, my kids didn't really want to go meet people they didn't know in a hotel. But no sooner did we get there than we were greeted so warmly. And your dad treated us four poor vagabonds to the most sumptuous buffet dinner at whatever tropical resort of Disney you were staying at. And it went on and on for hours, every kind of food. And we sat there and we felt like Tiny Tim got let into the feast. But all I remember is that your father was so generous, insisting on paying for all of us. And I stayed overnight with you, remember, in the hotel, and we stayed up all night talking. Just kind and generous, but the support and the love that he showed Stephen through thick and thin, through successful and learning all and as Lucille as well. And I think that Paul and Lucille are an example of what everybody would want their marriage to be. And I think that they would say the proudest thing they are of is their children, their grandchildren, and how wonderful they think you are and how wonderful you all are, which is a reflection of what terrific parents you had. And I want to kiss your dad. I know he's having a great time, out of pain, watching over you. A life well lived. And thank you for letting me speak about how fond I am of him. Still am. He's still there.
Thank you, Irene.
Okay. I met Paul and Lucy when I moved into their building in 1960. And we had the same apartment on different floors. Lucy and I were both pregnant, and Richie was supposed to come first, but Stevie made an appearance first. And Lucy was very excited about that, and I was too. So we brought the children up together for as long as we lived in Riverdale. And then I moved to New Rochelle, and they moved to Mamaroneck, and we continued to see each other and send the kids to camp together. And we both wound up with musicians, but mine was my daughter, and Lucy and Paul's was Stephen, of course. And I have to, first of all, nobody said anything about the bridge. They were killer bridge players.
Oh, right.
And not only were they killer bridge players, but they would play with anybody. If you were terrible, they didn't mind sitting with you and being at the table with you and watching you make one mistake after another. And it was really generous and kind of them. And that's the kind of people they were. Paul, I never saw him get excited. I never heard him raise his voice. And yes, he adored his children and Miranda, and just was such a family man. And I truly never saw a man adore his wife the way Paul adored Lucy. And I remember when Lucy and I used to go shopping for the children and for their camp clothes, whatnot. I hope I'm not talking too long. And we would go to Borland's and buy all these adorable little Merry Mite and Gay Sprite outfits. Remember, Lucy? And on the way home, Lucy would tell Paul every little minute detail of the shopping spree. And he was interested. And I couldn't get over how interested he was. But she, of course, made it interesting because Lucy could tell a story. She could tell any kind of a story and make it interesting. But that was just typical of his feeling toward her and his family, that no detail was too small for him not to relish it. He just relished everything. So it's a big loss. I know. I apologize for that. I don't know how to turn this off. Yeah. Anyway, it's sad. It's sad to listen, and touching, and very, very touching to listen to William Hirsch speak about his friendship, his long friendship. And I wasn't that close with Paul as I was with Lucy, but I feel that way too. It's very, very heart-rendering, this whole Zoom meeting. And my love and my sympathy to the family.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'll read what Tammy and Carly said. hello, everyone. It has been really lovely to get to hear what we are sure is a small fraction of the lovely memories of Paul. We have to hop off, but if there is anything we can do to support you in the coming week, please let us know. Miranda, we will be in touch. Love, Tammy and Carly.
Hi, guys. First, Grandma Lucy, I want to give you my sincere condolences. I love you guys. And I'll miss Grandpa Paul. That's what I have always called him. My fondest memory of him is him telling me I was the best babysitter ever. I will carry that with me always. He loved Grandma Lucy with all of him. He loved Cathy and Steve. He adored Miranda. He loved Raleigh. And I know he loved me too. So I grieve with you guys. I know he loved me. I love him dearly, and I will miss him. Take care of yourself, and remember, I am part of this family forever and ever, and I will always be there with you guys. I love you guys.
I'm Jay. I guess I'm Irene's second husband. And Paul never took me to dinner. So we'll have to talk about that. But I only met him a couple of times. But the thing I remember is this. We were doing a show, a little show up here at the church, Irene's church in New Fairfield, Connecticut. And Stephen was our music director. It was just me and Irene, nothing big, just a fundraiser. And nobody expected this, but we came out to do the show. And there at the front table were Mr. and Mrs. Silverstein. Cathy had rented a limousine for them and drove them all the way up from the city up to New Fairfield, Connecticut. And they were sitting there, the two of them, the three of them actually, and just as happy and proud of Stephen as if we were at the Philharmonic and Stephen was conducting the orchestra. And I'll never forget coming out and seeing, being surprised by seeing their beaming faces. And that's the memory I'd like to keep. So thank you.
John, my friend.
I just wanted to piggyback on Jay's tribute and say how much it was such an honor to have the Silversteins in my life, and the Silverstein Coopers always show up. The Silversteins and the Silverstein Coopers always show up. I would walk out of a stage door, even if Stephen wasn't involved, and Stephen would give me a message that they had come to a show or something that I was in. And it was just, they were always so generous with their compliments and their joy of what they had seen. But the most fun was really when I would perform with Stephen and I would talk to his parents afterwards, and we would talk about Stephen and how proud they were of him and all the great work that he did. And, you know, having known Stephen, I think being in your house in Scarsdale/Mamaroneck, I think, my gosh, so long ago, in the 80s, I think was where we met. I know they were very proud of you, and they were always so generous and so loving. I love the family so much, and God bless.
Because Rich Mancini, I will have to say this. If Rich Mancini won't say it, I will say it. Do you remember Rich Mancini coming to our place in Westchester for Passover? Do you remember in that? I believe you were there with your family one Passover. I don't remember how that happened, but you were there. It was like quite a fun, unique Passover.
Stephen, I'll just start by saying what beautiful things people have said about your dad. And I just want to say, including the words that both you and Cathy spoke were just lovely. And I guess what I would say is that each and every time that I spoke with your dad, when I would meet with him at various events and have a few minutes with him, he was just so welcoming and so thoughtful. And I just feel like he was a role model to all of us, that each and every time you speak with anyone or any person, you should always have a kind spirit and a gracious spirit. He was just a beautiful person at all times.
Thank you, Greg.
So I have been with Paul the last 7 years of his life. I've been the caregivers for Paul and Lucy. And so I knew all of the wonderful things that you all have been saying about him. I knew all of that. I could tell by his spirit. And as he gradually declined, he never complained. He was always kind, he was always loving, and he was always selfless. He was always just very concerned about his wife, Lucy. And so Lucy was a very lucky woman, is a very lucky woman to have had been married to him for 65 years. And I just will miss him. And I know Lucy will too. And I'm going to continue on with Lucy, and hopefully I will be able to comfort her a little bit in this time. Love you, Paul.
These have been beautiful.
I think it's okay to move on. If anybody, remember, put things in the chat, folks. Don't be shy about that. If you're shy about talking, it's been lovely to hear what everybody has to say. We knew this about Dad, but it's good that everybody knows this about Dad. So thank you. Sorry, off here.
I'd like to talk.
Sure, Miranda, sure.
May I add something, please, Steve?
Okay, sure, Billy. Hold on, let me go.
I just want to add one more thing about Paul Lester, that he was in the military. He served his country as well toward the end of World War II, and that should be part of your memory of him. That he was one of the people who put himself out considerably by being a good military man during very difficult years. I just think you should realize that aspect of his life as well.
Did you know, Billy, he told me just maybe a year ago that while he was in the military, he rode a motorcycle to deliver some papers. He said it was one of the most terrifying things he had ever done. He was riding on the back of a motorcycle, and that he also rode a horse, which is surprising to me. But it is not surprising to me that he was very quiet about all these things. And yes, we're going to make sure he has military honors.
Yes.
Because he deserves them.
Yes.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you, Billy. Okay, I think my niece Miranda wanted to say something. So go for it, Miranda.
One thing I always remember about my grandpa is how steady he was, and maybe because I started knowing him when I was young. He always had the longest legs, but walked in a way that if there was a coin around him, it would break before him. He just always was so steady. No matter what happened, he would be steady. He and Mom, when we visited, always fought over the bill. We finally came to
Who would win, Miranda? Who would win?
We were being 50. They were being 50-50. They finally came to an agreement that Grandpa would get breakfast when he was more awake, because he was a morning person, and Mom would get dinners because he got the breakfast. But it was after a long battle. As I said, I always remember him as such a steady person. He could just walk and see miles around the world of where he was going.
Thank you, Miranda. That's great.
Did you guys know that my dad was an amazing driver? And that for a while he was a driver for National Car Rental, and I was amazed. He could park cars like nobody's business.
Yeah, he was an incredible driver. And he had a great sense of direction. And this is way before.
Oh my God, such a sense of direction.
Way before all of the electronic everything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't need any of that. He could go in and out and in and out. And before you know it, he was there. Not me, but yes, him. He was amazing that way. Pamela, did you ever drive with my dad? I don't know. No. Anyway, he was a great driver.
I just wanted to add one thing that reminded me of, and that was when we went to visit him and your mom in Sarasota. He told us that mom was not retired; she was still working, and he of course had long been retired from being a stockbroker, and he got bored. So what he did, which I'm sure you'll remember, was he would drive a limo, and he would drive tourists to the airport. And then he and the other limo drivers would take all that they had made and buy lunch and drinks. And that's how they spent the afternoon, was spending the money that they earned. And he thought it was really a gas, and it was. Imagine.
That's right.
Yeah. So he had fun.
Yeah. Yeah. He knew how to have fun. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you all. All right, Rabbi Burt.
I know that all of you have created a healing space that you've filled with so many beautiful memories and so much love that I can feel it in the very depth of my heart. And I know that these memories and the love that you've shared are a great source of consolation to those who are grieving. You've brought them so much healing. And I know that they certainly do appreciate with all their hearts everything that you've given them today as we've paid tribute to such a beautiful life, a life truly well lived. There are a few other readings I want to include in our service. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will always remember Paul. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember him. When we have joys that we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is always a part of us whenever we remember him, and that will be every single day. There won't be a day that goes by when you won't remember him with increasing joy and appreciation. This is the traditional memorial prayer, first in Hebrew and then the English. El Marei Rachamim Shochen Bameromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim Utohorim Kizohar Harakia Masirim Et Nishmat Ben Yisrael Shahalach Leolamo Balarachim Yastireu Besetek Natav Leolamim Yitzror Betzror HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato Yanuach Beshalom Al Mishkabo V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the life of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Paul Silverstein, who has entered the mystery of eternity, the mystery of beyond being. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life, and may he rest in peace.
Amen.
Amen. And now we come to the very conclusion of the service, which is, of course, the Kaddish. And most of us know, I think, that the Kaddish is a prayer that's recited to honor those who have died, but it contains no reference to death itself. It's a very beautiful hymn of praise to the creator of life, to express our gratitude for the gift of life, and in these moments to especially express our gratitude for Paul's life and the gratitude we have for sharing his life. So I'd like the family to join me and anybody else who would like to join us in the Kaddish. Please do so. Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah. The Olma Divra Chirute, Yamlich Malchute, Bechayechon, Ubiomechon, Chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Vizman Kari, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Bevarach, V'olam Lomei Almaya, Yitbarach V'ishtabach V'itpa'ar V'romam V'itnaseh, Yitadar V'itale V'talal Shemei Dekucha B'richu, Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Yamiron Be'olma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromad, Uyaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. 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 Paul, whom we now remember, has entered into the peace of life eternal. His spirit, his presence will always live eternally in our loving hearts. Amen. Maybe instead of just finishing the Zoom, Steve, maybe we could go back to gallery and people might have some things to say to each other.
I would like to give the traditional parting words that you do when you go into a house of mourning. I'm going to say them in English. May you be comforted with all of the other mourners in Zion. And also, I just wanted to say, may his memory be a blessing. And may all the love and joy you shared help comfort you going forward in this difficult time.
Thank you, Saray. Thank you, every single person in this Zoom.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, you are treasure, and I know he is smiling. Anyway.
Love you, Lucy.
It was an honor to be able to join.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Rolly. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sue Ray. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Rabbi Bert. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, Cathy. And we love you, Mom.
Very, very moving, heartwarming.
And Stephen.
Stephen.
Oh, and me.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, for organizing.
Yes, I can hear you, Irene.
Stephen, I wanted to say, I forgot one thing to add. God bless you and your sister, Cathy, for going down and playing at the assisted living. That picture you put on of your parents holding hands with big smiles while you're playing for their friends and your sister singing. That was like the best news this whole year that I saw. And it still's making me smile. You should play them out, Stephen.
I'll play them out. I'll play them out. My piano's over there. I have to move all the way over there. I'll play them. I'll sing. You know what? I can tell you what we can do. I tell you one quick thing. My mother, if you have to go, it's cool. My mother, we found this out in the concert. We were just about to finish. And when Bobby, I remember her name, Bobby in the front row said, wait a second. you have to sing Give My Regards to Broadway. I said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And Bobby said, no, no, no. Your mother would sing Give My Regards to Broadway when she entered the dining room every day. So we did Give My Regards to Broadway. So I think we
So,
should all
Steve,
sing Give My
I
Regards.
have a story to tell you.
Yes,
One
go
of
ahead.
the residents came up to me and said, you know, your mom and dad, they'd sing all the time. And we wondered, what did they do in their life before they came here? And I said, well, mom was a lot of things. She was a teacher, she was a headhunter, she was an insurance agent, and dad was a stockbroker. And she said, you mean they weren't Broadway stars?
Oh, how cute.
That's funny. Well, I think we
cute.
should all end this, and everybody should unmute and sing the best version of Give My Regards to Broadway.
Yes.
Okay.
Give us a key.
I will
Give us a key.
give my, okay, ready? 5,
too
give
high.
us a key. Everybody pick
Get
your
a
own
key.
5, 6, ready, go. Give my,
My regards to
Broadway.
Remember me to
Together.
Square.
tell all the gang.
At 42nd Street, I'll be
Soon
be there.
Held down
How I'm
Yearning to mingle with the old time throng.
Keep going.
Give
my
regards
regards
to old Broadway and tell them I'll be there ere long.
From the beginning. Thank you all. We love you.
And
We
thanks,
love you
Rabbi.
too.
Love you.
God bless.
Take care, everybody.
Bye,
Steve.
Bye,
everybody.
It was
Bye,
a nice
Troy. Bye,
time.
Diane. Bye,
It was a
everybody. Bye,
nice
Maria,
time.
Miranda. Thank you all.
Thank